Good morning, everybody. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? It's a beautiful neighborhood in this beauty wood, a neighborly day in this beauty. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? I have always wanted to have a neighbor just like you. I've always wanted to live in a neighborhood with you. So let's make the most of this beautiful day. Since we're together, we might as well say, would you be mine? Could you be mine? Would you be my neighbor? Won't you please? Won't you please? Please won't you be my neighbor? Hi, church neighbors. Welcome to First Unitarian Church of Cincinnati. My name is Doug Rohr, and I am grateful to be here with all of you, and I welcome those of you joining us remotely. Occupying land that was once the sacred space of the Adena and Hopewell cultures and the Myaamia and Shawandasi peoples, our church is committed to social justice and to supporting the various spiritual and ethical paths of our members. Our community strives to be a welcoming place to all of our neighbors, which is why we provide gender-neutral restrooms, hearing assistance devices, and space for our children to be part of our community. We encourage you to be as comfortable as possible in our worship and community spaces. We also encourage everyone to welcome visitors as we show our love for our neighbors. If you would like to know more about our church activities or Unitarian Universalism, please contact us at member-care@firstuu.com. And now we will light our chalice. Our chalice lighter this morning is Colin Price, son of Katie Price. Fred Rogers tells us, all of us, at some time or another, need help. Whether we're giving or receiving help, each one of us has something valuable to bring to this world. That's one of the things that connects us as neighbors in our own way. Each one of us is a giver and a receiver. Thanks, Colin. Now, please rise as you are willing and able and join in our vision song. Keep standing up. And now it's the time where we get to greet our neighbors.
Glad to see you. Yeah, you forever. You'll outlive us all. Yeah, she said
And now it should be time, as you all settle back down, for our story for all ages.
You Are My Friend, the story of Mr. Rogers and his neighborhood. Words by Amy Reed. Pictures by Matt Fallon. In the springtime, when everything was growing and green, Freddie Rogers had to stay inside. Flowers made him sniffle. Plants made him sneeze. Freddie had allergies. Freddie had other illnesses too. He spent many days in bed. Sometimes he had to stay inside for weeks at a time. Being sick made it hard to make friends. Often, when Freddie felt sad or mad, lonely or scared, he kept his feelings inside. But he wanted someone to know how he felt. Freddie found that he could talk about his feelings with puppets. He gathered them around him on his bed. That way, it seemed as though he was with a whole group of friends. When Freddie went to school, sometimes he was bullied. Neighborhood boys yelled mean words at him, and they chased him down the street. Grown-ups told Freddie to pretend the mean words didn't hurt. But they did. Hiding his feelings didn't work. They just grew stronger. Sometimes, when he was all alone, Freddie cried. Freddie found it difficult to speak about his feelings, but he learned he could express them on the piano. If he was angry, he played loud, low notes that sounded like thunder. He played high, sweet notes for happiness. Freddie felt better after he shared his feelings through his music. Freddie's mother gave him a way to deal with his worried feelings. He told him to look for people who were helping. Freddie began to look for helpers right in his own neighborhood. He liked to visit Mama Belle Frampton. She welcomed him and showed him how to make toast sticks all by himself. Freddie liked the good feeling of learning something new from his neighbor. Fred's grandfather, McFeely, was an important friend. Fred loved to visit his grandparents' farm with its big stone wall. One day, Fred went into the room where all the adults were talking. No one looked his way. Fred asked if he could walk on the big stone wall. Then, everyone looked his way. Most of the grown-ups said, "No, you might get hurt." But Grandpa McFeely said, "Yes." Fred climbed and walked, and then even ran on the wall. When at last Fred came back inside, he had a skinned knee, but he was happy. His grandpa told Fred that he liked him just the way he was. He said Fred was special and that, just by being himself, Fred made the day special too. Fred let those words sink deep inside him. As he thought about them, he felt braver. He began to speak up. He tried new things. He reached out and made friends, even with people who weren't like him. One day, when Fred was grown up, he saw the television program. People were throwing pies in each other's faces. Fred did not like the pie throwing, but he thought television could be wonderful. What if, instead of showing people fighting, TV could show people helping one another? Right then, Fred decided that was what he wanted to do. Fred created a television show for children. He remembered all the people who had helped him as he was growing up. He thought of his neighbor, Mama Belle Frampton, who was always glad to see him. He wanted to share that good feeling with children everywhere. Fred wrote a happy, welcoming song to sing at the beginning of each show. He called his program Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and he called the people who watched it his neighbors. At first, Fred felt shy in front of the camera, but he found out that his grandpa was right. Just by being himself, Fred made his show special. Fred told stories with puppets. He played music that he wrote. He invited helpers to show what they liked to do and explain how things worked. Fred took his television camera to visit a farm who had milk cows. He asked a friend to show how people dig with big machines. Another helper played the cello, and another shared how to cook. Fred explained to his neighbors that feelings were important. You could talk about them, or you could show your feelings in other ways. If you were mad, you could pound clay or run fast. If you were sad, you could sing a song soft and low. If you were happy, you could dance. Fred helped people learn to like themselves. He helped them to be good neighbors. Fred never forgot how his grandpa made him feel. Over and over, he would look right into the camera and pass along the important words that changed his life. You've made this day a special day by just your being you. There's no person in the whole world like you, and I like you just the way you are. If you're watching this at home, you can pause here to read this brief biography of Fred Rogers and the author's note. Or here to read the illustrator's note. I wonder, how do you manage your feelings? What do you do when you're mad or sad or happy?
This is the time when we contemplate the joys and sorrows that are in our hearts. This water before me represents the love of our community. We drop a stone in the water to seek the softening of our sorrows or the amplification of our joys. All the individual joys and sorrows come together in one bowl of water so that they can be symbolically shared and borne by our community. We invite you now to come forward if you wish, up the sides of the aisle and back down the middle to reflect on your joys and sorrows. We will now drop 3 more stones into our water of community. One is for all the joys and sorrows outside these walls that go unmentioned. A second stone is for those joys and sorrows that go unspoken, but that we have closely guarded in our hearts. The last stone is for the brokenness of our world as we search for ways to be agents of wholeness by placing ourselves in that breach. The hymn we are about to sing is called "We Belong to One Another." The lyrics will appear on the screen. Many of us know the tune as "Come Thou Font of Every Blessing," which was set to an American folk tune. Now please rise as you are willing and able to join us in singing "We Belong to One Another." Our Share the Plate recipient for February is the Greater Cincinnati Homeless Coalition. Mona Jenkins, Director of Development and Operations at the Coalition, is joining us in the service today. And thank you for being here. And she will be available for questions after church at the potluck as well. The following video will introduce the Coalition and show how we can help our unhoused neighbors.
Hi everyone, my name is Mona Jenkins.
Hey everybody, I'm Dr. Mark.
And we are with the Greater Cincinnati Homeless Coalition. We want to say thank you to First Unitarian for selecting us for February's Pass the Plate. So what exactly do we do?
Well, we do all sorts of things in the advocacy realm here at the Homeless Coalition. That means that we might be changing and pushing for better laws to protect people, including yourself, our constitutional rights. We also work in education. I run the education program, so we have speakers who tell their stories. We do walking tours and Over the Rhine to hear about the history and what's going on with gentrification. And we also do training as well. So this might be something you might be all interested in, I would think.
That's right. And since I'm the Director of Development and Operations, I am responsible for the fundraising, which is really key because we don't receive traditional governmental funding. So from federal, state, local, because of the fact that some of our member agencies do receive that funding, we try to make sure that the most is available for them. And so we don't take those avenues. And because of the fact that we are also advocating, it's really one of those things where we rely on grassroots things like this, or our annual fundraiser, or different fundraising activities, is the primary way that we collect funds to support the work that we're doing.
And your donation today can go to support our advocacy efforts. It also includes our organizing. So we're organizing to help tenants stay in their homes. We do tenant organizing. Rico is our director of community organizing. So he's out right now at different apartment complexes hearing about the maintenance issues that people are having and helping them to form tenant organizations so that they can have a collective voice. Your money today, your donation today, and you can give tomorrow too. We're always looking for donations.
Every day.
Also help support our newspaper. This is a street paper. It's part of an international newspaper organization where folks are selling these papers or asking for a donation, and it's a way for people to have funds for transportation, housing, food, all sorts of important stuff. So your donation today also helps us keep Street Vibes going.
That's right. And so one of the other big things that we do, which is led by our executive director, Josh Spring, is we are advocating for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So that's something that was established back in 2018, back due to grassroots efforts and folks. Yeah. We are now trying to get a steady stream of funding for that. So this year, we are launching a signature campaign to get a dedicated stream that is so important that we have affordable housing within our city.
And one of the other things that Mona does, she wears many hats here, all of us do, but she's also coordinates our member organizations. So back here you can see several of our different member organizations. We have over 70 member organizations that are part of the Homeless Coalition, and they do direct services like provide shelter, food, clothing, legal, and medical services, and we help support them by coordinating different donations, working collaboratively on grant applications if they need information from us. And those member organizations are really important to the Homeless Coalition because they're part of our collective voice. So just like your donation today helps build our collective voice, those member organizations are also part of our collective voice as well.
That's right. So we hope that you have learned a little bit about us, but always feel free to reach out to us. We are here in case you have any questions, and feel free to join us as we move through this year, having different community events, and we are also able to come and speak if that is something that you would like.
Follow us on Facebook. We post a lot of our events on Facebook. So we have a Street Vibes event coming up on February 11th. It's a book fair at Buddy's Place. You might want to check that out. But make sure you connect with us on social media, mostly on Facebook, but we have an Instagram for Street Vibes that you can also get on as well. But please, please, please be generous today, knowing that we will make sure that every cent of your dollar goes the furthest we can take it, and that will be in eradicating homelessness here in Cincinnati. And this is an effort that is led by the Homeless Coalition with all our member organizations, and with your support today, we can do a lot more. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Giving to First Church is easy. You can text the word GIVE to 513-717-7373. If you have access to our Breeze member system, you may click Give Now, or you can give online at firstuu.com. You can also write a check to First Unitarian Church of Cincinnati and mail it to 536 Linton Street, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45219. If you would like to give to the Greater Cincinnati Homeless Coalition, our Share the Plate recipient, please write GCHC in the memo line of your check. If this is your first time with us, please let the virtual plate pass you by. Your presence is gift enough to our church. As you listen to the offertory, please be aware that our flowers today are given by Mary Mark in memory of Tyree Nichols of Memphis, Tennessee, and Joe Frazier of Cincinnati, both innocent young men who were cut down early in their lives by the hands and guns of police violence. We grieve for their families and for a society that still criminalizes skin color. butterflies inside it, then your heart is full of love. When your heart feels just like overflowing, then your heart is full of love. Love is fragile as your tears. Love is stronger than your fears. When your heart can sing another's gladness, then your heart is full of love. When your heart can cry another's sadness, then your heart is full of love. Love is fragile as your tears. Love is stronger than your fears. When your heart beats for a special someone, then your heart is full of love. When your heart has room for everybody, then your heart is full of love. Thank you. Our speaker today is Katie Price. Katie has been a member of First Church for about 5 years. She's a public defender in Frankfort, Kentucky. Last fall, Katie shared a sermon on the Gospel of Johnny Cash. If you haven't seen that yet, go back to our YouTube channel and find it. Watch it. Watch it again anyway, even if you have seen it. Today, she brings us a message about a very different individual, Fred Rogers, who reminds us that we all are neighbors in the interdependent web of life.
Good morning. Didn't Doug just do a phenomenal job? I think that he deserves a round of applause. I knew it was going to be good, but it just blew me away. Doug did great. So, Mr. Fred Rogers, he's an icon. He graced the screens of preschoolers for generations. He was on the air from 1968 until 1976. He took a break and did some adult programming, and then he realized the kids need him, and he went back. And so he continued his programming from 1979 until 2001, which is a pretty long time. Each show was very simple, very set up for small children. He came in singing. He changed his blazer into a sweater, and he changed his shoes into sneakers. And he sang to the children, won't you be my neighbor? It was very sweet. And he usually brought in something, and he showed them something neat and talked to them about it, and then he'd bring them out into the community, and he'd introduce them to someone who could do something cool or was a helper or was giving back to the community. Then he'd bring them back home, and they'd go off to the land of make-believe where puppets would confront problems that are both big and small. And all the way just built very much for loving children and communicating with them in a very honest and frank manner. Mr. Rogers didn't shy away from difficult topics. He talked about war. He talked about change, about assassination, divorce, power, integrated societies. He neither talked down to children nor talked over the heads of children. He was there for them. He liked them just the way they were. And he reminded them of that every single day. And they liked him too. Mr. Rogers, by all accounts, was like this off and on camera. I don't think Mr. Rogers would much appreciate being referred to as radical. If you look at his actions, The things he was doing were before his time, but they really shouldn't have been. And I think he recognized that looking at people as human beings and looking at them in a loving way made things like integration obvious. The answers are obvious when you're just looking with love. But still, in a world that he took actions that varied very differently from his contemporaries, in that way, he kind of was pretty radical. For reference, my organization got a diversity and inclusion coordinator last year. Mr. Rogers was coordinating diversity and inclusion in the 1960s. Mr. Rogers was a Presbyterian minister. He was a, believe it or not, lifelong registered Republican. His philosophy was very simple: love yourself and love others. He saw his show as an opportunity to have a spiritual experience. He hoped that it would be an antidote to the ills of consumerism and violence that were on TV and marketed towards children. He saw television as an opportunity to have a nationwide community. He knew that teaching kids about their emotions was a service to the nation, but most importantly, he knew the power of vulnerability. He maintained a platform of inclusivity and acceptance. He made sure that he brought on people of different abilities. He maintained a diverse set, the real meaning of the word diverse, and he made sure that his actors and his staff were diverse. At a time where pools became a symbol for resistance to integration, where white communities were being told you must integrate, you must allow people of color into your pool, so instead they were closing down the pools. During this time, Fred Rogers had an episode where Officer Clemens, who was a black man, was walking by and Mr. Rogers was soaking his feet in one of those little blue pools, and he invited Mr. Rogers to come put his feet in the pool with him. Officer Clemens said, "Oh, I don't have a towel." And Mr. Rogers said, "You can borrow mine." And that's a message by itself. It's very simple. It's very sweet. But he was making a statement. And keep in mind, he had corporate sponsors, but he was leading with love. And he did the thing that love required him to do. In a much later episode, he tended to keep the same staff and actors around. In another episode, he actually was washing the feet of a much older Officer Clemens. And for me, I think that really brings the symbol together for what this Presbyterian minister was trying to do. He made sure everybody knew that he was happy to see them. He told people that often on camera: "I'm happy to see you. I'm glad you're here." He was very conscientious of the needs of others. A blind child had written him, and he talked about his fish often, and that child was very concerned about whether or not he was feeding his fish. And he realized, oh, blind children can't see. So from then on out, he made it a point to, every once in a while, let the viewer know that he was feeding his fish. He brought on a child who was in an electric wheelchair, Jeff Erlinger, and he had been his arms and his legs had been incapacitated by a tumor as a small child. Mr. Rogers brought him on, and they talked about his fancy chair and had a frank, honest, not patronizing conversation about that child and his feelings. And they sang a song together about how much he likes him just the way he is. It's not his hair or his fancy clothes or his fancy chair. He just likes him just the way he is. And through those actions and through that love, he was showing every single person he brought on that same level of acceptance and love and inclusivity. He spent his career showing children how to be a neighbor, but he didn't do that by recommending that they get their trash cans in by 7 or they bring their dogs in when they're barking too much. He showed them how to love themselves and how to love one another. Think about that. Think Think about how being a good neighbor isn't just about loving others, it's about loving yourself. Fred Rogers knew the power of leading with love. He said, love is the root of everything, all learning, all parenting, all relationships, love or the lack of it. I happen to believe that Fred Rogers, in a lot of ways, was reacting to conventional parenting wisdom from the 20s and 30s, where the cutting edge basically dictated that children should be seen and not heard, that children are little adults, that loving them meant withholding from them, not picking them up when they're crying, not engaging in their basic needs. And a lot of that cutting edge parenting was pretty widespread by the 1960s. I think now, if you look at some of that parenting advice, we would call that disordered attachment. And Mr. Rogers was a member of a very important wave against that idea. He did the absolute opposite of ignoring children. He acknowledged kids' feelings. He took them seriously. He celebrated them. He guided them. And he let them know that they were important and valued. I'll ask rhetorically, how many of your problems come down to a moment that you were not heard as a child? How many of us are healing from moments in our childhood? How many of your insecurities come from childhood? Mr. Rogers knew this. He spent so much time letting children know that they were loved for who they are. He took it very seriously. And perhaps you're doubting this philosophy. There was certainly a backlash against Mr. Rogers, often conservative in nature, if we're being honest. There was an idea that telling children if you love them just the way they are, that you would turn them into tiny little narcissists that would never have to work for anything, that thought they could just do whatever they wanted. They compared it to a participation trophy. They called Mr. Rogers evil, which feels like, I don't know, kind of an extreme, even for them. I guess there's no neutrality here. It blows my mind that someone wouldn't like Mr. Rogers. It does not compute. But there are a whole lot of people out there that have these feelings. But what I think is really interesting and very ironic here is that the clinical root of narcissism is actually an extreme lack of self-love. And that narcissism is actually the antithesis to unconditional love. Because not loving yourself is so distracting that you're no longer able to care or empathize with others. Loving ourselves allows us to love others. When we show ourselves grace, we feel better about showing others grace. When we acknowledge and accept our feelings, not necessarily act on them, it makes us more able to acknowledge and accept the feelings of others. When our own needs are met, we're in a better position to meet the needs of others. Fred Rogers knew that love your neighbor as you love yourself doesn't mean anything if you don't love yourself. And Fred Rogers showed us how to love others too. He spent a lot of his words telling children, I love you just the way you are. I like you just the way you are. You should handle your feelings, and here's what you can do when you're upset. And those were the words out of his mouth. But if you look at the actions of his show, there was very much a service-minded mentality. If you looked at what the adults were doing, they were almost always helping others or teaching others or giving back. He was showing service in how to serve by showing service in how to serve. He encouraged us to empathize with others and to hear their stories, to enjoy them, to celebrate their gifts. He praised giving and helping. He knew the power of small gifts and knew that you don't have to do huge things to make a big difference in someone's life. Sometimes small things make a big difference. I think I figured out the method to Mr. Rogers' madness when I smacked my arm on the banister one day. I must have yelped or something. I'd hit my funny bone. And my son came running. And he grabbed my arm and he looked what I was holding and he made sure it was, I guess he was making sure it was okay. And are you okay? Do you need a hug? Can I hug you? Gave me a hug. And he led me back to the couch and he sat me down on the couch and he got me a blanket. It's my funny bone, guys. Like, nothing bad actually happened. Maybe I'm just dramatic. I don't know. And I was kind of stunned into silence because I was just like, it's my funny bone. We're good. We're good. And I didn't really know what to do because I didn't want to discourage him from being loving. But as I sat down for a minute, I had this realization that, I'm not tooting my own horn as a parent. I guarantee I'm making a million mistakes pretty much daily. But I understood that by treating my son with care and compassion when he got hurt, he understood how to care for me and other people with care and compassion when they got hurt. And that we show people how to care for one another by caring for them. Won't you be my neighbor is a question. It's an invitation to be loved, to be seen as important, to matter, to be celebrated. It's an invitation to heal our inner children. It's unconditional love. It's a calling to both be students and teachers of love. It's a calling to love our neighbors, not just the people that share a fence, but the people that are in our communities, the people that are homeless, people in the whole country, people in the world. Every person we encounter is our neighbor. Fred Rogers taught us to be before our time by seeing and leading with love and see humans as they are. He taught us to be helpers, to be a welcoming community. He taught us to ask, won't you allow me to love you? Won't you be my neighbor?
Is my neighbor every soul who lives upon the earth. I have been called to treat each one with dignity and worth, working for justice, seeking peace, and cultivating care, offering hope to those whose lives are laden with despair. When I can ease another's pain, I know I'll do my part. When I can bring another joy, I'll open up my heart. When I have more than someone else, I'll share the things I can. When I am tempted to be cruel, I'll strive to understand. Who is my neighbor? Earth itself and all the beings there. Flora and fauna, fish and fowl, the trees that graze the air. River and prairie, sea and sky, I honor and respect. These are my neighbors, these I vow to cherish and protect. Oh, may we build a world where all have everything they need. May we be free from hate and fear, from violence and from greed. May our lives be tributes to compassion, love, and trust, till we are kin to all the
when your heart has room for everybody, then your heart is full of love. He very carefully said that word, everybody, when he sang it on his show. At the end of every show, Fred Rogers told us, there is only one person in this world like you, and people can like you exactly as you are. This is wonderful advice for our self-esteem, but we also need to remember that each individual is unique, and we must respect the inherent worth and dignity of all of our neighbors, both through our words and our actions. Before we extinguish the chalice, please remember that our first Sunday potluck is today after church. Please join us, whether you brought a dish or not. We genuinely want your company, and there is always plenty of food. And now, we will extinguish our chalice by repeating the words on the screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.